Good morning, everybody. As you said, I'm Dr. Maureen Schwer, and I am the Director of Integrative Services here at Sierra Tucson. I am a naturopathic doctor, and as such, I always try to get to the underlying cause of what's happening when I'm working with someone. So when I meet with someone and I'm having that first intake, I'm always listening in sort of two very different ways. Part of me is listening from a very medical perspective. I'm thinking about signs and symptoms. I'm thinking about biochemistry. How are the hormones? Are they balanced in this person? What's the nutritional status? But another part of me is always listening in a different way. And what I'm listening for is the person's story. And what I mean by that is, how do they feel they fit into life? Is their story, I am a happy, healthy person and I have some minor things going on? Or is their story, the world is a not very safe place and I could have something horrible happen to me at any moment? Those stories have a huge impact on how people, on their health and on what can allow them to heal. So one of the newest things that I have found is polyvagal theory. I know it's been around for a while, but for me it's new because I've started to really look into it. And today I want to share that information with all of you so you can understand that. So I'm going to just turn off my webcam here and work off the PowerPoint. Okay, I'd just like to tell the helping staff that I can't move my PowerPoint. Oh, now I can. They did something fancy. All right. So some of you might be familiar with the ACEs study. So in the 90s, Kaiser Permanente did a huge study. And what they did is they sent out two different surveys to their members. And so they had 17,000 people that they send out two different questionnaires. The first asked them about adverse childhood events. Was there verbal abuse in your household? Did someone have an addiction? Did your parents get divorced? These sorts of things. And then they also sent them a survey asking about their health condition. Have you had emphysema or heart disease? Do you have anxiety or insomnia? So what they did when they got this back was have a very good database to look at how adverse childhood events impacted people's health. And what they found was that more people than they thought, first of all, had adverse childhood events. More than 50% actually presented with one or more events. So what they also found is that people who had 4 or more positives in those adverse childhood events had a huge impact on their health. And so what the adjusted odds ratio actually means is, for instance, people who had 4 or more adverse childhood events were 160 times more likely to have diabetes. They were 390 more times more likely to have chronic bronchitis or emphysema. When it came to things like suicide attempts, they were 1,220 times more likely to have a suicide attempt. So this study really showed us how much the stress, especially in childhood, affected people. So I've known that for a while, and I've been looking for more effective ways to be able to understand exactly how this happens, and more importantly, how do we effectively treat this so that people can have their nervous system come back into regulation and they can have health and happiness. So polyvagal theory has been around for quite a while. Stephen Porges is a medical researcher. He started in the 60s to research the autonomic nervous system, the part of our nervous system that automatically happens. And in the 90s, he developed polyvagal theory. So I've known about this for a while. However, if any of you have read Stephen Porges' book, you would understand he writes like a researcher. It's very dense and it's difficult to kind of glean out of it the kind of information you need that helps you understand, how am I going to apply this to myself and to my patients? So Deb Dana is newer to the scene. She is a therapist who's been working closely with Stephen Porges, and she has developed a series of books and other resources that are just so helpful. Deb Dana's gift to all of this is she is a very talented teacher and communicator. She takes a complex theory and puts it in such an easy to understand format, and then she follows through with really specific ways that if you're a therapist, how you can work with your clients, or if you yourself are having difficulties with your nervous system, which is basically all of us. She's really put this together in a way that is so easy to use. And I have to really right now tell you, almost everything that follows this really has come from Deb Dana. So the autonomic nervous system. Our nervous system has this autonomic setting that is just amazing. Our nervous system is designed to keep us safe. So as soon as we have any kind of real or perceived threat, there's a complete change in our biology. So if you're sitting and you're relaxed and you're having a good time, and then you suddenly are told really bad news, your entire nervous system changes. Your digestion goes offline, your heart rate changes, your breathing changes, how you see changes, what you hear changes. You're a completely different physiological person. And this was developed to be able to help us adapt to changes so we can survive. You need these different settings. You need settings to relax and be present with your family, and you need settings that are very different for times of danger and for times of extreme danger. So we are always in sort of an automatic state of either mobilization, disconnection, or engagement. And what's important to know is that this is normal. This is how everyone is wired. I think so many people have this sense inside themselves that their willpower should be able to overcome their nervous system, but that's not how it works. What happens is our nervous system reacts, and then our brain realizes that, and our brain makes up a story. Our conscious mind makes up a story, but that story may or may not have anything to do with what's really going on. So understanding this with loving understanding, knowing how our system works is a better way to address this and to know what to do about it. So remember, these are all normal states that are designed to keep us safe. And the concept of resiliency. So resiliency is the ability for us to easily move through these different states and to return back to a state of calm and engagement. That's what resiliency is. And that's really the goal for all of us. A resilient nervous system is a nervous system that is healthy. A resilient nervous system allows us to have happiness and joy and connection in our world. It allows us to move out of anxiety and into a state of safety. And what we really found is that trauma interferes with resiliency. And that's really the biggest problem. Where that ACEs study, where it all comes down, the reason that those adverse childhood effects had such an impact on so many different health states is because trauma, and especially childhood trauma, interferes with this autonomic nervous response. And it interferes with our ability to easily go back into a state of relaxation and connection. Oh, fancy. Sorry about that. All right, so the old paradigm. When I went to school for years, I've been presenting this information, and we have thought about this autonomic nervous system as having two settings, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic is the rest and digest setting, and the sympathetic is the fight or flight setting. Now, if you look at all these different organs, the way that all of these are connected to the autonomic nervous system is through the vagus nerve. And you can see that little vagus nerve shown there. So the vagus nerve has been this connection to these systems. So this is what we used to know. What Stephen Porges has done is provided a new way of looking at it. And one of the things he realized is that this vagus nerve is not just one nerve. So if you were to look at that, like when I studied anatomy, the vagus nerve looks like one nerve, but what it actually is two nerves that run in the same sheath. And what he realized is that the two different parts of this nerve have very different roles in the autonomic nervous system. So this is a poster that's available through Stephen Porges' site. And the details, it's a wonderful poster, I recommend it, but overall I wanted just the visual to do this. So what Polyvagal theory explains is that there are three parts to our parasympathetic nervous system. So the oldest part is the dorsal vagal, dorsal meaning the backside, like dorsal fin on a dolphin. So the dorsal vagal pathway is the part of the pathway that we share with reptiles. So this is the part of our nervous system that is responsible when we are in extreme danger or extreme overwhelm, we go into a shutdown mode. And so this is a protective measure. I have chickens in my backyard, and I notice whenever a hawk goes over, their dorsal vagal goes in and they all just freeze. I used to think there'd be noise if there was danger in the backyard. What I realized is silence means that there's a problem. So a hawk flies over and everyone goes quiet. All of the birds do. And so that's part of that dorsal vagal. They go into freeze because in the freeze mode, they're more likely to avoid getting caught by the hawk. So the newest part of this is the ventral vagal. That's the front part of the vagus nerve. And the front part of our vagus nerve innervates it interacts with the nerves of the face. And so smiling, talking, singing, these are all activated by the ventral vagal pathway. This is the newest pathway. It's a pathway that we share with mammals. And in between is a sympathetic setting. So when we are in danger and fighting or flighting, running away or fighting is an appropriate response, then our nervous system will kick in the sympathetic response. So there are three core elements to polyvagal theory. So the first is, and I'll go through these in more in detail following this. So the first is hierarchy. Our autonomic nervous system has a normal hierarchical response that's predictable and normal. And so what that means is that all of us really react in the same way. And this helps us to understand it's not our fault. If we had a lot of childhood trauma, our nervous system very predictably will act in a way that is very different from someone who had a very healthy, safe childhood. The second of these principles is neurosection. And so what's driving this whole system is the neuroceptive response. And this is part of the limbic system, and that's part of the brain that we share with mammals. So if I walk into a room and there's a guy in there and he's talking in kind of a mean, angry voice, my nervous system will notice that and react to it before my logical brain understands. And so I may walk into a room and feel really nervous and not have any idea why for a while. And I might make up a story about that, but it might actually be that his loud, angry voice is reminding my brain of a time when a loud, angry voice made my life not safe. So the third really important piece here is co-regulation. Our brains are developed in such a way that we are designed to co-regulate with other people. And what that means is that how we feel, how our nervous system is set is very impacted by other people. This was designed as a species for us to be able to survive. So as top predators for humans, what we should remember is that we're kind of lame top predators. Where compared to a grizzly bear, we are smaller, we don't have claws, we don't have sharp teeth, like we don't have a lot of these really big, strong body physical characteristics to let us take on anything. What we do have is the co-regulation. Humans are designed to work together in community, and that has evolved because we are more successful that way. If we care about each other, if we go out of our way to help each other and support each other, our species is so much more likely to survive. And so this co-regulation is another sort of absolute. It isn't something we can turn on or off. We are impacted by other people. So let's go back to the hierarchy. I love this. Often the autonomic nervous system is shown as a ladder. So the top is the ventral vagal. So when this part of our nervous system is active, we feel at ease, we feel we can manage anything. This is that calm, relaxed, socially engaged state. If something happens that our subconscious recognizes as potentially dangerous, we'll go into a fight or flight mode. And here we're mobilized, we might be agitated, irritated, and this is where we see the world as a dangerous and unfriendly place. So if the threat that we are getting is really severe, or if if we fought and fought and fought and fought and fought and it hasn't really helped, then what happens is we'll go into that dorsal vagal sense of collapse. And so there, when we're in this mode, we're going to feel buried. It's going to feel as if help and support is far away. It's going to feel as if nothing can help us. So this is also a normal part of our nervous system. So for instance, I was once, when I was a teenager, I was in my friend's car. We were going somewhere and her brother was driving and he wanted to beat this train. So he was driving super fast around this corner. What I remember was feeling safe and social in the car with my friends. And then I remember being kind of scared because he was going awful fast. And then I have no memory of us hitting a telephone pole. I do remember coming out of that into this. I remember being a little confused and a little sort of afraid as I looked around. All of us were fine. And because I was 13 and I was really like resilient, we actually went to the place we were going. And I don't recall it being something that impacted me even the second day. But my dorsal vagal really kicked in because I don't need to remember hitting a pole in a car. That's not helpful to my survival. And so the memory is actually different during that set, but it was all part of this normal system. So this is something we commonly see. It's another way of looking at this system. And you can see that we move into fight or flight. If that social engagement is where we want to live, but if we are activated, if something seems scary, we'll move up into fight or flight and we can move into freeze. One of the really difficult realities of all this is that if we've been in freeze, when we first come out of it, we will move through the sympathetic. So when we first come out of that, it may feel like things are worse because it's scary, but it's actually just part of our nervous system resetting. This is the neuroception part. In our limbic system, these are the three parts of the brain. The frontal lobes are the logical brain, our conscious brain, the limbic system is our emotional brain, and then our brain stem is the oldest part of our brain. So the limbic system has the amygdala, and the amygdala is like our fire alarm. So everything you see, hear, taste, smell goes through the amygdala. If the amygdala associates anything in the current situation with a past situation that was scary, it'll set off the fight or flight or even the shutdown mode before our logical brain even knows what's going on. And this is just how we're wired. It's why maybe if we're young, we got scared during a thunderstorm. We don't remember it, but it could be that thunder scares us in adulthood because it sets off this nociceptive response. So this is just a funky picture I got to remind me of this. In the 1950s, they did a study on, they actually had a chimpanzee live with human children. They moved it into a family to see what they were looking for is how will the chimp, will it become more human-like growing up with people? They had to stop the study because it turned out that the most apey of apes are human. So it turns out that what happened is the children started acting like a chimpanzee more than the chimpanzee started acting like the children. So they had to remove the chimpanzee. We have these mirror neurons where we mirror each other. This is part of that co-regulation. Humans are very tied into each other, and we use those mirror neurons to get along in society and to help either regulate ourselves, or if we're around people who are very dysregulated, that can lead to dysregulation for us. So co-regulation, we learn how to regulate our nervous system. It's one of the most important skills I see. Working in a treatment facility, I see that the ability to self-regulate your nervous system is crucial. And unfortunately, most of us learn this skill set when we are young. I realized when I was learning this stuff that I spend most of my time in the sympathetic mode, and I'm in the fight path, but my fight is overachievement. I just feel better if I'm constantly scanning the surroundings for danger, if I have plans, if I have more plans, if I figure out what to do, if I have more money in the bank, if I learn more so that I'll be smarter so someone will want to hire me. This constant do, And I realized when I really look back that no one in my household when I was growing up was very good at regulating. If something was upsetting, you lost your temper and you started screaming at people. That was our go-to thing. And so there is a part of me that's very good at that. Luckily, I also now have developed another skill set and another way of dealing with it. But when things are tough, that's sort of the first place my nervous system goes. And I have to consciously interrupt that pattern and move to something else. This is just a book I love, The Whole Brain Child. This is a book on how to raise emotionally healthy children. I think it's helpful for any of us who have children in our lives. It's also, I found really helpful for me to understand how to parent myself. In the end, we have to learn how to regulate ourselves and also be better at looking at who we're around for co-regulation. I'll go to questions now. I didn't do the handout for this 20, like this 25-minute format is so fast. And my PowerPoint is not that helpful. What is super helpful is Deb Dana's site. So the Rhythm of Regulation is her website, and she has a whole resources section. She has an overview of the Polyvagal Theory, the 3 parts of it, this like 8-page handout that is a PDF. You can download it. It gives you so much more good information, and she has other webinars and other things. So this link will be sent in a thank you letter afterwards, and I really recommend that you turn to Deb Dana for more information. She is an amazing gift to our society. All right, let's take a look at some of the questions. One is about in which system activation are we in when we're in that fawning submissive behavior? So the fawning submissive behavior piece is part of the fight or flight. And so it's a try to get along kind of thing. You don't feel safe, so you're over worried about other people. How can I make you happy so that I'll be safe? How can I take care of you so that I'll be safe? That is a sympathetic response. If you keep doing that and you're not successful at it, you can go into a deeper depression response because it just isn't working. If you're in some sort of relationship where that works and it keeps you in this kind of fight or flight safety zone, like relatively safety zone, you could continue doing that for years. The point is to realize at that moment you're not really feeling safe, and what you want is to be able to move into this higher state of social engagement. What is the title of the child brain book? I'll go back to that slide for you guys, since I have so few. Here it is, The Whole Brain Child. Sorry, everything's going so fast. It just keeps changing my screen. Co-regulation with what or whom? So I love that question. So the thing is, we are always in some state of co-regulation, this understanding that with the mirror neurons, we are very impacted by other people. And I think this is such an important piece of this. And so to really realize that this is a reality. So it is possible for some people who have a really high skill set to remain in a regulated pattern around very dysregulated people. And that is an exhausting thing to have to do. To do that, you're often in sort of more that sympathetic mode. And so recognizing that we co-regulate each other is an important piece of this to help you understand how your own behavior is affecting other people, and also how the behavior of other people is affecting you, to be able to bring this forward. And so that's a very complex process. Deb Dana actually goes into it in some of her books in quite detail. How do you see addiction within the model of polyvagal theory? Addiction always falls in that mode. People, when they are in an addictive mode, they're trying to find an alternative way to move back into that ventral vagal state. We want to live in that ventral vagal state. But for instance, for myself, I grew up in a household with a lot of dysregulation. My dad was an alcoholic. So my go-to way, I used workaholism was my go-to thing. And what happened is There were times, especially when I was like a teenager, where I was in that sort of dorsal shutdown. And some part of my brain made up a story. If I'm perfect, everything will be okay. If I work harder, everything will be okay. So once I started doing that, I moved into the sympathetic mode, which felt way better than that shutdown mode. The thing is that that's exhausting. And what I really want is more of that higher relaxed mode in my life. So for instance, you might be in that fight or flight state, and you have some alcohol and it relaxes your nervous system and you start talking to people and you're more social, and that activates the ventral vagal. You associate alcohol with a better co-regulation with people. You feel better in that, and it becomes an addiction. It plays into all of these different patterns. Suggestions for bringing children out of the frozen zone when they've been traumatized. So again, Deb Dana, she actually has a book all on specific therapies around that. But what I love about this question is it goes to this sort of bigger place. In general, these are vast generalizations. Deb Dana has so many more specific examples. But in general, if someone is in the freeze state, especially children, movement and activation helps to bring us out of that state. And so when you're in a freeze state, you tend to look down, kind of down. And so sometimes just looking up, going for a walk, getting outside, throwing a ball back and forth, it starts to activate the nervous system and bring you into that sympathetic state. When you're in the sympathetic state, mindfulness things, and also good interaction, co-regulation in a positive way is really helpful. That's why, like if a child is really activated and they're crying and they're upset, parents naturally are calm and relaxing around them. You use your higher state of regulation to help them. And with children, what's wonderful is they will react to like singing a song with them is a really good way, because anything that activates that ventral vagal pathway, which is associated with our voice and our eyes and our smiling, anything that activates that actually puts a brake on the sympathetic. So there is something called a ventral vagal brake. So when we are positively interacting with people, it actually calms our nervous system. All right, well, I have to end this now, so you guys can go on with your day. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you spending some time here with this webinar. I hope you have a wonderful work week and join us again for the future webinars. I have a lot of wonderful coworkers who have a lot of interesting things to say. All right, take care.